listen, she's speaking incoherently. She must be talking about Frank. Oh,
she's been traumatized.
You put your virus in me. Oh no, that's not me. Shh. Lay down on the couch. We're gonna get you some help.
Proverbial you. It's just the proverbial you. It has nothing to do with me.
She's get her some water, please. Everybody, leave the room. Get her some water. Don't listen to what she's saying.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Chat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash Well-Dressed Man Beaumont.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing tonight?
Gene, I'm very excited. Tonight, we're going to go to the darker side of film, as one of our great listeners, Ken C., has commissioned the 1986 psychological horror film noir, Blue Velvet.
Well, and Ken read in and said, hi, Big D, Gene, and Ash. Blue Velvet holds a special place in my library of inappropriate and awkward movies to watch with your father and stepmother. On one dad's weekend, I had my awkward first viewing of Blue Velvet, and the film stuck with me through the years as one of my favorite David Lynch films. Blue Velvet has some of the worst lines that I've ever heard delivered. Yes, that is an ear. And some truly unique and bizarre moments that I'll never forget. While I'm not a David Lynch fanboy, I do feel like this is a gem that belongs in every true cinephile's library. Personally, I take a few points away for terrible line delivery and acting in many places, and add them back for amyl nitrate and dancing on cars to Roy Orbison and Dennis Hopper. Happy Halloween to you all, and to my fellow listeners, best Ken.
How does Ken not tell us how old he was when this happened? I think that's a big, at 9 or 10, really troubling. 12, 13, a little less so, but the age is very important.
I don't know what you're talking about. I would not watch this movie with my mom now. And I'm 42 years old.
No.
Fuck no.
No, but as a kid, I think it would be awkward. It would be even weirder. I remember watching The Karate Kid with my dad, and there's a makeout scene that I felt weird about because I was super young. Watching that sex scene with Jeffrey and Dorothy, I think that would have been a rough one to watch.
Blue Velvet. It's an inappropriate movie for all ages.
Mm.
And this is coming from a guy who watched his father whack off on a video camera, if you remember.
For the record, that's Big D talking about his own father.
I know,
not
I was
me.
about to say, I think you need to clarify, because that does a
sorry.
dangling modifier and felt like that was Gene for a second.
Yes.
This is the only footage of my dad I have. Blue Velvet is a 1986 mystery written and directed by David Lynch, blending psychological horror with film noir. The film stars Kyle MacLachlan, Isabella Rossellini, Dennis Hopper, and Laura Dern, and is named after the 1951 song of the same name. The film concerns a young college student who, returning home to visit his ill father, discovers a severed human ear in a field. The ear then leads him to uncover a vast criminal conspiracy and into a romantic relationship with a troubled lounge singer. The screenplay of Blue Velvet had been passed around multiple times in the late 70s and early 80s, with several major studios declining it due to its strong sexual and violent content. After the failure of his 1984 film Dune, David Lynch made attempts at developing a more personal story, somewhat characteristic of the surrealist style displayed in his first film, Eraserhead. The independent studio De Laurentiis Entertainment Group, owned at the time by Italian film producer Dino De Laurentiis, agreed to finance and produce the film. Blue Velvet initially received a divided critical response, with many stating its explicit content served little artistic purpose. Nevertheless, the film earned Lynch his second Academy Award nomination for Best Director and received the year's Best Film and Best Director prizes from the National Society of Film Critics. It was credited for revitalizing Dennis Hopper's career and providing Isabella Rossellini with a dramatic outlet beyond her previous work as a fashion model and cosmetics spokeswoman. So when I was 14, talk about inappropriate content, I heard this movie had boobs, bush, and a blowjob scene. But it wasn't hidden in that adult section at Video Paradise. If you guys remember, like in the 80s and 90s, you had to go past that door. Sometimes it was like a beaded curtain, and like it had that black window, and you had to go through that to get to the adult section. It wasn't just out in the open. So this wasn't in that section, but it had boobs, bush, blowjob, the 3 Bs, right? So I rented the VHS. I went home ready for the closest thing I'd ever seen to porn. And I think I turned the movie off like halfway through and decided I was definitely not ready for a blowjob.
No.
Well, I love David Lynch. I am a David Lynch fangirl. Ken, I think he's amazing. I love Twin Peaks. It is one of my absolute favorite things on the planet. Carrie Gross, when she used to be on this pod, was a huge David Lynch fan, and I sent her this thing I made for my brother. I crocheted this amazing corpse from Twin Peaks and like had saran wrap. Like that's like a log lady from Twin Peaks. Like this is how deep my Twin Peaks fandom comes, is that I crochet like the little people from it.
As a lucky recipient of an Ash crochet, I got to tell you, this shit is top-notch work. Like, whatever you're imagining in your head, it ain't that. It's that if it was made by God's hands.
Well, I mean, especially when you combine Twin Peaks with the crochet. Like, I mean, it's great. And this is a natural movie, therefore, for me to love. I really like the David Lynch world. I think his cinematography is really amazing. And I saw this for the first time, like Eugene, when I was like 14 or 15. I didn't really know what I was getting into, but I had this friend who was a freshman in college when I was like a freshman in high school that I'd met in like a drama program. And they were cool, right? Like they knew cool things. And this is that person who like helped expose me like Pulp Fiction and like, you know, taught me about what I was like supposed to be listening to music wise and what type of movies I was supposed to be watching. And they're like, you have to watch David Lynch. Like he's an artiste, and the darkness of his films, the story from this movie, it always stuck out to me. So I was really excited to go back and watch it because I have not seen this in probably about 10 years. And I was like, okay, some David Lynch Shat treatment. It's weird. I don't know if this is what this pod was made for, but Ken, we're going to do it.
So Ash, like you said, Carrie Gross, she used to rave about David Lynch's work. And I just had never seen it, never been into it. For some reason, like the hype around Twin Peaks, it turned me off. I felt like the people who recommended Manhunter over Silence of the Lambs were the same people being like, you have to see Twin Peaks. It's great. But for me, I think that he's a bit bizarre for being bizarre's sake. And this movie, you know, it just never spoke to me. I never saw it. But Gene, as far as a first experience of blowjobs, bush, and breasts, you had to have gone 9.5 weeks, or even My Tutor was some of my first experiences. This was way too arty. This might have scared you off of sex.
Wait, was that a movie called My Tutor or Your Tutor?
No, My Tutor. There's a teen boy who's blossoming and becoming a man, and he has a tutor who teaches him more about the textbook and teaches him the way of love. So it's probably a bad film, but not as artsy and over the top as this. This would have scared me.
Mm.
Not to be confused with the period piece, My Tutor.
No, very different film.
We're on a roll tonight. Let's hit the trailer.
From the mind of David Lynch comes a modern-day masterpiece, so startling, so provocative, so mysterious, that it will open your eyes to a world.
Neighbor, here I come. You got about 1 second to live, buddy.
Student Jeffrey Beaumont returns home to North Carolina to see his ill father. Walking home from the hospital, Jeffrey discovers a severed human ear and takes it to police detective John Williams. John's daughter Sandy tells Jeffrey the ear relates to a lounge singer named Dorothy Vallens. Intrigued, Jeffrey, posing as a pest exterminator, gains access to Dorothy's apartment. He steals a spare key while she is distracted by a man in a yellow sport coat whom Jeffrey nicknames the Yellow Man. So as this movie's starting, in the opening credits, we see the logo for the De Laurentiis Entertainment Group. And I normally don't pay attention to the studio behind a movie, right? I sometimes fast forward to the credits, just get to the movie. But I've started to notice a pattern here with the De Laurentiis Entertainment Group. They were really willing to release some weird, like low budget shit in the 80s that our listeners really love. You guys have commissioned it, and I've seen the pattern, right? Blue Velvet, Manhunter, Maximum Overdrive, The Transformers, the movie, Evil Dead 2, and of course, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. That's a lot of shit that we've covered. And of course, De Laurentiis Entertainment Group went bankrupt because it had more misses than hits. Because this entertainment group also brought us Dracula's Widow, Radioactive Dreams, Tapeheads. Have you guys seen any of those?
No, originally I would have said no way. But looking at the titles makes me think of Robot Jocks. And that was such a diamond in the rough. I think maybe Tapeheads or Dracula's Widow could be a diamond in the rough.
Tapeheads is fucking awesome. Tapeheads is such a weird, random movie with John Cusack. It's got a really young, like, Tim Robbins in it. And it's about the two of them. They're trying to start this, like, video production agency. Like, Weird Al randomly makes, like, a cameo in it. And it's actually really kind of funny. And that kind of movie, I think, is perfect for Shat. Like, I think we would have a lot of fun with something like Tapeheads. And just the box alone is ridiculous. But I had no idea, Gene, until I was reading your notes that this movie production company had done all of those films. And that's an insane collection of movies. Evil Dead 2 is such a good fucking movie. Like, it is one of the best, like, horror films ever. Bill and Ted, perfection. Manhunter, as we've already talked about, really good. And then fucking this, like, I am down for, like, just doing, like, a sub-pod of apparently all of the films that this company released.
Yeah, I don't want to be Mr. Good Old Days here, but studios today, you really got to sit back and think they take it so safe. Everything is so safe. I mean, I'm not talking about stuff that's released in streaming. I'm talking about stuff that they're willing to put on a big screen in a theater. Man, like in the 80s, there were no rules. They're just like, yeah, is it cheap? Cool, let's make it.
Yeah, I think cheap or weird. They didn't care. Now everything is formulaic. It's a sequel, it's a Marvel, it's a superhero film. Back then, they did some weird shit. In this movie, including David Lynch, he's a weird dude, and he's famous for Twin Peaks. There was the big mystery of Laura Palmer. And as I'm reading the HBO description of the movie, it says David Lynch's surreal small-town murder mystery. So it opens up, and we get some bizarre scene. And I know what he's doing. He's showing this beautiful, suburban, idealistic White House and the picket fence. And underneath it, there's this darkness and there's these insects and it's not what it seems. I understand that's what he's showing. But we get this weird Rube Goldberg death machine. There's a baby walking down the driveway, in case you haven't seen it in a while. There's a dog attacking water coming out of the hose. There's a slow motion zoom into the Beatles. But what happened? What happened to Jeffrey's dad? He's pulling on the hose. It gets kinked. It gets stuck. He pulls it. I couldn't tell if he got electrocuted, if he got shot, if the bugs played into it, if he had a heart attack. You didn't need to be so complex. The reason we needed him to get hurt, injured, sick is to get Jeffrey to come home. Why this elaborate just setup?
Because it's David Lynch. Because this is what he does. He shows these idyllic situations. There's this man, there's that idealism, and then it's shattered in a moment by some random tragedy. And it's meant to drive home, like you said, the shock. It's beautiful. It's this whole idea. I mean, Lynch does a lot of shit. Yes, he does it in Twin Peaks. Yes, he does it here. But a lot of stuff about how suburbia is not all it's cracked up to be. It's very similar. We just have reviewed American Beauty. It's so similar to what they're doing there of showing how the life that we think we all want is actually full of debauchery underneath it. So you got your white picket fence, you got your beautiful red roses, but yeah, you got your insects and shit underneath.
Yeah, but this would be the equivalent of American Beauty if Lester went into the garage and then just fell down. And I don't know how he died. He just did. If I were writing a story, Ash, and you were grading me, and I wrote, the man experienced some tragedy, would you not circle that in red and comment, what tragedy? Is it a stroke? If it is, why is his neck in traction? Did he break his neck falling down? I don't need a real complex explanation. A simple explanation as to what the fuck happened to Dad would allow me to get past that and onto Jeffrey's story.
What I love about these questions is that, like, this is by far the most straightforward of all of the David Lynch films. Like, if you have a problem here, the other shit's not going to be your cup of tea. And I had actually forgotten that. I forgot how straightforward Blue Velvet is. Like, Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway, this is not. And I think there's something interesting about the fact that he tells this story in, like, what is, like, a non-Lynch way. And so it allows him to include these little like moments that are kind of like consummate to his storytelling. And a perfect example of that, by far the most like famous thing from this movie, is the ear bit. Right. This is one set piece that Lynch does what he does, which he fucking overuses and drives the metaphors like into the ground if he's going to use one. And so here you get, you know, this shocking thing that oh shit, it's an ear, right? But then it's also ridiculous that he's walking along and he finds a fucking ear. And then it's also used like as this plot device to get into the whole idea of what's Jeffrey doing. He's eavesdropping, you know, very on the nose, right? But it's linked to him getting over his head with Dorothy and the weird sex stuff that he shouldn't like be able to watch and see, but he does. And the ear opens all those doors, and it's just like this string that pulls through that Kyle MacLachlan does so well. And I just think it's awesome.
I appreciate the oddity. I appreciate the metaphor, but David Lynch, show a little restraint. I don't need you to zoom down the fucking ear canal to understand it's an ear. And I get that this is art. I guess that it's something different, but so are Nick Cave albums. And I skip a lot of tracks on those too. Like David Lynch is allowed to film whatever he wants. I don't want to restrain him as an artist, but I, as a viewer, am allowed to roll my eyes and say, we get it, dude. Chill the fuck out.
Yeah, man, it's Lynch and Lars von Trier's, right? Like they're the two that like just, they do go a bit overboard sometimes, but fuck if it isn't fun.
The other difficulty I had in this movie was understanding the relationships between people. I couldn't understand what people were into each other, whether they hated each other, whether they're trying to get rid of each other. We've all been in that weird position where you're hanging out with someone and at first you thought they were cute, like maybe they had a nice ass or something they did with their face. You're like, oh, okay, yeah. But then you quickly realize there's no chemistry or they have some hugely unattractive feature you missed upon first assessment. For me, it's normally teeth or a smell. Blue Velvet gives us loads of ways that people are expressing that, but they're not expressing that. Like when Jeffrey and Sandy are strolling at night, he's like, well, I guess you got to get back home pretty soon. I thought he was trying to get rid of her, but he's not. And then he's like, let me do my chicken walk. And he does his chicken walk. And she reacts with a, that's kind of interesting, which to me is like, that is not funny. That is kind of interesting. And so in the movie, I'm under the impression that they're just going to stay friends because they don't seem attracted to each other at all.
No, they're both wholly uninterested. There's nothing about them that makes them desirable, but in that they're perfect for each other. They're both this awkward, annoying. They have this whiny conversation where I think it's Jeffrey is like, you know, why do people like Frank exist in the world? Why is it so messed up? And then we get Sandy with the whole thing about the Robins and the end of the world. It's to me, it didn't ring as true. And then we get this whole thing that Jeffrey, he is bizarre to that people should be afraid of him. There's been a murder in the town and he's walking around and conveniently stumbles upon the ear. Then what does he do? Let's pick it up. I'll hold it. I'll put it in the bag. I'll walk it to the police. He is a bizarre dude who has to be the number one on the police list.
I was thinking about this, though. If I was walking around and I found an ear in a field, I don't know that I would know what to do with it either. It's not like he's got a cell phone. You don't want to leave it there. He picks it up, he puts it in a bag. That's reasonable.
I agree. Like, I mean, what do you do? Do you just walk past the ear?
No, you go to the nearest house and say, please call the police. I'm going to stand here.
You go to a house and say, I found an ear?
Do you want to look guilty? You're a weird kid doing the chicken dance, and now all of a sudden you find a bloody ear, pick it up, and take it in?
But what if you leave it, and then when you come back, it's not there anymore?
Guess what? I'm not a suspect. I don't care. The police will figure this out. It's like walking into a house and being like, ooh, a bloody knife. I'm going to pick it up.
That is so different than if you're like, do, oh, ear. Like, that's very different than if, like, you go into an active crime scene.
Well, here, I'm going to even make, you said doot to doot to doot. He's not doot to doot to doot. His dad has had a stroke or whatever, and he's like, la, la, la. Oh, a rock in a shed. La, la, la. How about you hustle to go see your dad? All this is it's just like checking the boxes for suspect.
Well, Jeffrey and Sandy attend Dorothy's nightclub act, in which she sings Blue Velvet. Dorothy returns home, discovers Jeffrey hiding in a closet, and forces him to undress at knife point. Frank Booth, a psychopathic gangster, interrupts their encounter. He sexually assaults Dorothy while inhaling narcotic gas. Surmising that Frank has abducted Dorothy's husband and son, Jeffrey suspects Frank cut her husband's ear off to intimidate her into submission. While dating Sandy, Jeffrey starts a sadomasochistic sexual relationship with Dorothy. He sees Frank attending Dorothy's show and later observes him selling drugs and meeting with the Yellow Man. Jeffrey then sees the Yellow Man meeting with a, quote, well-dressed man.
Okay, so I want to give a little love here for Kyle MacLachlan. He and David Lynch together are just a wonderful masterpiece. And I think that this shows why. He is so good in Twin Peaks. And Lynch just knows how to shoot him and make him look awkward and make him look kind of strange, but also make him like really interesting, and how to get all of that out of him the way that other actors and directors that he works with like don't know how to do. Point in fact, fucking Sex and the City. One of my biggest issues with that show was what they did to Kyle MacLachlan. And if you're not familiar with his character, they took him and they made him into this character that Charlotte, the most bland of all of those women, decides to marry, and he's impotent and he can't get it up, and therefore they can't have a baby, and he does this weird episode where he buys her like a cardboard baby. It's very strange, but not strange in a fun way. It's just he's just kind of a whatever actor without like that Lynch treatment. And I think that this happens like, and we've seen this in other films, like Leonardo DiCaprio and Scorsese just have something special when they work together. Johnny Depp and Tim Burton, really special. Tarantino and Tim Roth, really special. But some directors like this here, like Lynch and MacLachlan, they just know how to work with actors better than anyone else. And I think that's why you get this out of him. And these movies would not be the same without Kyle MacLachlan or Laura Dern, which we'll get to later. But the two of them just are so consummate David Lynch actors.
Yeah, if David Lynch's goal is to make Kyle MacLachlan look awkward, then he fucking nailed it in this movie. I can't think of a single Kyle MacLachlan performance I've liked. You go to Dune, didn't like it. This, didn't like it. Twin Peaks, didn't like it. Can you please help me understand what people like about him? So not what David Lynch is trying to get out of him, but what is likable about this man?
I don't know. It's just the way he moves and the way he's shot and how awkward he is, and how there's like this subtle, like almost like non-intentional comedy that happens with those movements. Like it's like those people that you have in your friendship group that you're not really friends with, but like you still like follow on social media because like they're strange and you just enjoy watching the messiness of like their existence. Like there's just something interesting about watching him just exist as these really awkward as fuck characters.
Is he a good actor?
When he's with David Lynch.
I feel like that's a stretch.
I don't think so otherwise. No, that's why I'm saying the Sex and the City thing, right? Like, I think he doesn't know what to do. I think Lynch like ruined him in a way because like he doesn't know how to be anything other than what Lynch wants him to be.
I'm going to propose something here. What if he is just a strange, awkward guy who, when you put him in a Lynch film, it fits. But if you put him in a normal film, people are like, holy shit, that dude's weird.
Maybe.
Because all I can think about is the pool scene from Showgirls. Great movie, by the way. It's a love scene that looks more like a shark attack. It's just very, very bizarre. It's weird. But I want to try to separate here in the way that I analyze it, because there's two parts to David Lynch. There's the director and the writer. I could tolerate the weird direction. I think that can be interesting in a lot of films that we do. But the script, here's my issue. I felt it was inauthentic. I felt like the script was written by someone who had never had sex and only watched porn, but they were writing a scene about sex and what it would be like. It was written by somebody who had never done drugs. They'd only seen it on TV, and they're trying to imagine what it would be like to be high. What would a drug dealer say? How would a drug deal go down? But they had never known any criminals, drug dealers, or generally scary people. There was an idea of what it would be like. I think like this is like a child writing a script. They don't know any curse words except for the few ones they've heard their parents say. This is like a kid Tarantino film. If Quentin Tarantino was like maybe 12, 13 years old, had written it without experiencing it, Blue Velvet felt as authentic to me as if someone had come to me, a studio, and said, Richard Ebert, we would love you to write a space film. I know just enough information, the basic parameters. I'd be like, oh, there's been an EMP. We need to shield the shuttle. The plasma's leaking. Let's rattle the oxygen tanks. We're going to slingshot around the moon. All these things that I know just enough, but anybody who's experienced them would be like, you're full of shit.
If you're listening, Ash is gripping her face. She's rubbing her eyes. Now she's blinking rapidly. Something's about to happen.
This is such a cop-out what I'm about to say, but I just don't think you get what David Lynch is trying to do here. And that's okay. Like, this dude is not for everybody. Like, I am not, like, this is not mainstream movie making. You joked about not watching this with mom and dad just because of the sex stuff, but also just because, like, my mom and dad be like, well, what the fuck are you watching? My dad refers to movies like this as trash floating on water. Like, he'd rather watch trash float on water than watch something that's trying to be this inherently, like, artistic. But he's a visual feast, right? So that's the first thing. Like, everything is supposed to be visual here. He's markedly not for everyone. And you've got to understand that the biggest, like, criticism that he gets is how surreal his films are. And, like, what is surrealism? Well, like, surrealism is, like, somebody's very, like, anti-realistic worldview. So I don't think it's supposed to feel authentic. I don't think it's supposed to be, something that he knows everything about. I think it's supposed to feel off because it's these vanilla suburbanites that are like getting trapped in these sex fiend worlds and they don't know what to do. And it's just...
I feel like Ash is Bob Diamond eating like that shit plate.
Yeah.
And Big D's Albert Brooks being like, what are you eating there? He's like, you'll understand it when you get more intelligent.
When you get to level
so much
2,
better to you.
When it's not even about intelligence, right? Because like God knows we'll get another 1 star. It's not even about intelligence. It's just like your taste, right? Like if like you go to see a film for the story, like David Lynch is not a movie, like any of his films are not something for you to go see because it's not about the story. It's about the experience and the visualness, like the visual aspects and thought processes that come with what he's presenting.
I think both these takes are accurate, right? I think that David Lynch does understand surrealism, does understand dreamlike imagery, but none of the people in this movie look or sound real.
Yeah.
And it's distracting in a way because you can not look real or sound real, but be cool. That's possible. And there's a few, I think Raymond's cool. I think Paul's cool. But by and large, our heroes for sure are not cool.
Yeah, and I think, Ash, like you said, you could have that protected suburbanite, the kid who's never experienced life, but have the criminals be realistic. When we get Frank like cracking and he's got his mask and he's like,
so good,
and he's screaming, "Daddy, Daddy, Mommy, come here, fuck! I'll fuck everything." I'm like, dude, this is it's absolutely
so
ridiculous.
Good though. He's like so the best villain ever.
Are you serious?
Yes,
I feel like the narrator was on crystal meth.
He's so good.
So good for what?
Like, just to watch.
Yeah, it's definitely a what the fuck in a good way. No, in a good way, though. I enjoyed that part.
Just fun.
Getting back to Ash's theme on this, that Blue Velvet being an illustration of the primal side of humans being so much tastier than boring suburban life. I did appreciate that aspect of it. Like, I would much rather have an affair with a crazy woman whose husband and son were abducted and who blows me at knife point. I would definitely prefer that over hearing about how Milquetoast Sandy's dreams go about Robin. Like, Big D, you can't tell me that world that he's created with Dorothy and, Frank's gang and stuff isn't more exciting and appealing than boring suburban life.
Oh, 100%. Like the weird stuff with Frank and his gang and Ben and out at the mill or wherever the hell that was. That shit, because it was crazy. I felt like it was Natural Born Killers. Make the whole movie just this wild adventure. But you can't sit me in a diner and talk like high school kids going on their first date and smooching and worrying about Mike finding out that she's cheating on him.
But like that's the whole point, is that they're supposed to be like a binary of one another. Like they're supposed to be like the direct opposites. It's supposed to be like this extreme on one side of like these vanilla ass people and this extreme on the other side of these fucking crazy nitrous users, right? Like it's supposed to be that strange and black and white, and you're supposed to see that transition and then realize that that's what they want to be, but they're lying to themselves by thinking that they're not, because they really are if they remove their own boundaries, right? Like that's the whole fucking point of this movie.
And I thought I wanted to ride along with the crazies until we get into the Dorothy sex scene that Big D alluded to earlier. When Dorothy is trying the dirty talk with Jeffrey, she's like, "Do you want to be a bad boy?" I realized I am so not into kink. Like, despite the appearance, despite the history, I don't like hitting people. I don't like talking dirty. I don't like being tied up. I don't like choking. I don't like doing like weird shit with hot wax. I'm starting to think like, fuck, am I sexually boring? Because none of this is hot to me.
Don't touch me. I'll kill you. I feel your disease in me now. I'm like, okay, I'm checking out. I'll see you later.
It's so much fun though. But like none of it, like, I mean, you don't have to hurt people. Like, I mean, definitely like don't hit people. I mean, you don't have to be like pegged. Like none of it?
I like muscles.
Okay.
That's about it. Yeah, I don't know. Big D, are you like, does any of this do any shit for you at all?
I could see some interest in it, but
I told you, dirty talker.
Oh, yeah, sure. I think there's when you're in the moment, yeah, I think, but
like, what do you say?
Yeah, but you definitely don't say, come to daddy. Daddy wants mommy.
I'm not talking about Frank.
Oh okay.
I'm talking about Dorothy and fucking Jeffrey.
I think just like just being open with what you want done, being assertive. I think that's attractive.
I hear a lot of dancing in this minefield, Big D.
I made the mistake once before of being very forward and very open about some dialogue that had gone on between me and Vanessa. I'm not going anywhere near that tonight.
So Ash is the kinkster in the group.
No, I'm admitting to it, but I just won't give details.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't like weird shit with wax. I'll get with you there. Or hitting people. Or being hit. I don't want to be hit.
Do you like hitting?
I said or hitting people. No, I don't want to hit. But like none of it.
No tying up? Any ropes or any bondage?
I mean, I'm fine with those things, but I'm asking Gene, like none of it?
Nah.
Yeah,
I mean, I'll tie a person up if they want, but I don't really like it.
Have you ever had a toy come into play, Gene, either on you or your partner?
Oh, yeah.
Well, there you go.
But it's not like a turn on. I'm like, oh boy, toys. I'm not Jeffrey from fucking Toys R Us.
Have you ever had somebody watch or had the interest to?
I've watched The King Bee before.
Really?
Yeah.
How was that?
I just sat on a pile of his laundry and just, he's a very giving, accurate. He is a very giving man.
Oh.
I picture it'd be like watching Grizzly Adams wrestle a bear.
Jesus Christ. I mean, this is a long time ago. Pre-Grizzly Adams, Big D.
Oh, okay. But Big D, King Bee.
See, but there you go. Like, you're getting less vanilla by the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'll watch people fuck. That's fine. I don't know if that's... But I'm not like, I'm not going fucking Requiem for a Dream here. I'm not flashing flashlights in people's faces and having these double-sided dildos. I hope
none of us that would do that. But
Big D's being suspiciously quiet.
It's because I've walked into that minefield before.
Well, back to Jeffrey and Dorothy. Okay, so I get that he's supposed to be attracted to her beyond her body. She's dark, she's exciting, she's seductive, she's violent. But I got to call the casting on Dorothy a big miss. I know that Isabella Rossellini is very celebrated for this role. But as you said, Big D, when she says, I have your disease in me now, it should be a mix of sexy and gross. But it's just gross. The sexy is missing. And I think about like Basic Instinct, right? Basic Instinct, we saw what can happen when you mix something that is taboo with incredible sex appeal. I would let 1992 Sharon Stone stab me without complaint just to be in those scenarios. This ain't it.
No, and I don't know, how does she make her life as a singer? She cannot sing. She is not Jessica Rabbit on stage. She has no presence. When she's performing Blue Velvet, one of the multiple times she sings it at the Slow Club, I'm finding myself being like, at least make her a decent singer. At least have somebody else. But again, maybe that's part of the, otherworldly, abstract, is that this woman could get a job as a singer. But all I kept thinking about was Fabian from Pulp Fiction, Butch's girlfriend. You like my pot belly?
She's sexy.
Yes. Isabella Rossellini is not.
I think Isabella Rossellini is beautiful. I think she's a beautiful woman. And I think this works here. Like, these lounge acts don't make it big for a reason. Like, if you've ever been in New Orleans, like, there's the good places to go, and then there's a lot more places with people like this at it. They suck. Like, they aren't that good at what they do. They just work in a place because there's a lot of like free blow, and they work there and they sing a couple of songs that are the same like every single night. So if this is her big act, then that's probably what she's gonna sing. And I do think she's supposed to be like this illusion of sort. Obviously, like, she looks good on the outside, but like, she's actually really seedy. And what I do think is really interesting is the way that he shoots Isabella Rossellini. Because Isabella Rossellini, if you look at like pictures of her from this time period, she's so fucking gorgeous. And he shoots her in a way that makes her not as attractive as she actually is. And I like that about it.
Yeah, I mean, if the goal was to take a model and turn her ass into like 50 pounds of chewed bubble gum, then mission accomplished, David Lynch.
Yeah.
Well played.
Surrealism.
When Frank catches Jeffrey leaving Dorothy's apartment, he abducts them and brings them to the lair of Ben, a criminal associate who is holding both Don and Donnie hostage. Frank forces Jeffrey to watch Ben perform an impromptu lip sync of Roy Orbison's In Dreams. Frank and his gang take Jeffrey and Dorothy on a high-speed joyride to a sawmill yard where he again attempts to rape Dorothy. When Jeffrey punches Frank in the face, an enraged Frank and his gang pull Jeffrey out of the car. Replaying the tape of Roy Orbison's In Dreams, Frank smears lipstick on his face and violently kisses Jeffrey. He beats Jeffrey unconscious while a woman dances on the roof of the car, and Dorothy pleads for Frank to stop.
So we've kind of alluded to this already, but obviously one of the things that's being explored in this movie is this idea of like what would happen if like societal constraints and boundaries and community standards were like released and we were like left to our own debauchery, our own human nature. Like, would we still have like really vanilla sex where we were nice to each other and said we love you afterwards, or we want to like go beyond what it is we've been allowed to be? Would we turn into what is like true debauchery? And I think that what Lynch plays on here is this uneasiness that a lot of people feel like bubbling below the surface as humans. Like, if you ever fell like into like a porn hole where like you go on and you look at like your normal type of porn, and then that one video pops up and you watch it and you still get a little turned on by it, right? Like, you see like this, like what we're capable of becoming, and like more importantly, will we like it when we turn into it? And I think that that's a brilliant part of this film and these characters, especially Jeffrey, who's like the most vanilla dude, because Kyle MacLachlan is like the most vanilla dude of all time. And he's thrown into the dangers of just not like being what we as like the audience think that vanilla, like typical dude is gonna like be anymore.
I don't know. I'm with Big D on this one. At what point is Jeffrey vanilla? This is a guy that's picking up strange ears. He's dressing in disguises. He's sneaking into a woman's home and spying on her. He's having an affair. He's manipulating his girlfriend into fucking crimes. He's smacking a woman around. Like, this dude is weird.
He's weird once he picks up the ear. Right? Like, that's what starts the whole thing. And I know but like, that's the string. He picks up the ear and like he's pulled into this world.
Big D, we missed it. David Lynch was telling us it's weird.
It's weird.
No. Listen, you can't dismiss Jeffrey as vanilla. I want to know what Jeffrey's doing at college, because no vanilla, like nervous college kid is willing to go break into her apartment on the 7th floor and then just gets it on, goes right immediately back to Sandy. He's an experienced dude. He knows he is not vanilla. He's working both women. He then gets caught, gets out of it. He's legit. Jeffrey knows what's going on. But the other side of that is we got Frank, and I can't figure out, why is Jeffrey so afraid of Frank's gang? They're a bunch of clowns. I wish they had actually been intimidating. I wish they had been a little more on the, we don't need to see violence, but at least hint that they could do something. But I felt like it was Biff Tannen's gang. They seem about on the same level that they could hurt someone. They look like the misfits left out of Buckaroo Banzai's, the Hong Kong Cavaliers. They're all dressed strange. Nobody really intimidates Jeffrey. But when Frank's beating him and smacking him around and we look up on the roof of the car and we get the girl dancing and he's huffing gas and kissing him, I wish there was more of that, but mixing a little more possibility of Jeffrey getting hurt.
Possibility of Jeffrey getting hurt. They kidnapped a child and his father and cut the dude's ear off. Like, you don't find Frank even remotely intimidating? He's crazy as fuck.
I kept expecting they were going to find out that really wasn't the husband's ear, and it had been, possibly just, it's a random ear, maybe a hobo.
What is it, the Big Lebowski?
Oh, see, it could happen. It definitely could happen.
The wrong rug.
Big D, you talked about that surrealism and that weirdness. That scene at Ben's house,
it's great,
was the moment I understood what made David Lynch special. Like, I never really dove into Twin Peaks beyond the first few minutes of the first episode. I didn't care for Dune. The Straight Story, where he drives the riding lawnmower across the country, that was okay. But I didn't even realize that was David Lynch. Watching Dean Stockwell in a frilly shirt with makeup and a golden smoking jacket singing Roy Orbison into a mechanic's lamp while Dennis Hopper is crying in a room full of middle-aged women with Raymond handling a snake while standing on the couch. It was like watching dreams on screen. And what I loved about it is I always felt there was something off with the John Waters movies. There's just something about it I didn't fully appreciate. It was like a artificial sweetener, right? It tastes good at first, but there's something you just don't like. It was that camp factor. And David Lynch is like John Waters without the camp. I didn't care that I didn't understand it. I just wanted it to keep going. I could have watched 2 hours of Ben's house. This Is It, the movie, I'd be there.
I totally agree. I would spend 2 hours in there. I wanted to know those women. I wanted to know what's going on in the other room. Ben, I can't tell if he's wearing makeup or if he's pale. Is he a vampire or is he part of the goth culture? Because he looks one off and I can't figure out what's going on with him, but I want to know.
I don't think that you're supposed to know. And I'll say this, Jean, yes, this is the greatest explanation of what makes David Lynch so fascinating. He's all the things that you said. He explores reality in a way that's both off-putting and really beautiful, just like dreams are. How you have those dreams where part of you in the dream, it's really satisfying, but part always feels like it's a nightmare because you don't know if you're going to be able to get out of it because it's not real. And part of you knows it's not real. That's what his films feel like to me. And he puts that on screen. And maybe more than any other director, it's this authentic version of himself. He puts what he wants to put and he sacrifices all critical, he sacrifices all commercial success, for creative success. And that takes some fucking balls to do in Hollywood.
Jeffrey awakes the next morning, bruised and bloodied. He discovers that Detective Williams' partner, Tom Gordon, is the Yellow Man, who has been murdering Frank's rival drug dealers and stealing confiscated narcotics. After Jeffrey and Sandy profess their love for one another, they're pursued by a car which they assume belongs to Frank. Sandy realizes the car belongs to her ex-boyfriend, Mike Shaw, who threatens to beat Jeffrey for stealing his girlfriend. Dorothy appears on Jeffrey's porch naked, beaten and confused, and Mike backs down as Jeffrey and Sandy whisk Dorothy into the house for medical attention. So David Lynch did some serious movie magic in this scene when Mike confronts Jeffrey outside his house to beat him up for stealing Sandy. I'm watching the foreground and I'm expecting to see MacLachlan get punched in his stupid fucking face. And then out of the darkness in the background, there's a fully naked, dazed and beaten Dorothy. And it's jarring as fuck. That. It just turned into a horror movie in a split second.
She popped out of nowhere. This was like John Rambo. When John Rambo comes out and stabs one of those deputies, but we get the best line. He's going to get his ass kicked. And then somebody sees poor Dorothy and they go, "Who's that? Your mother?" "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry." I was just like, holy shit, what's going on here?
Yeah. I mean, what I love about this is we go from film noir to psychological horror in a split second. And it's really unexpected. It's really unnerving. And I have seen this movie so many times, but it never fails to give me chills. Thinking about Dorothy, I feel really badly for her. She's meant to be this darkness. You've got Sandy, who's, all bright and beautiful. And then you've got Dorothy and the darkness. I think Laura Dern's really beautiful.
I think beautiful is
You don't think Laura Dern's beautiful?
Not when she's crying.
No.
She was beautiful in Jurassic Park.
Yeah, she let's just say she aged well.
She grew into her
She
beauty.
She grew into it.
Okay, fine. Fine. But I don't even know where to go.
I'll just check off my Laura Dern nose comment. Okay, check. I don't need to go back to that one.
I love Laura Dern. But, you know, Dorothy, like the darkness that like consumes her and like this part of the movie is kind of harrowing. And she pays a huge price like throughout the film. And I think Isabella Rossellini, she does a good job. I never really understood why she didn't become a bigger name in film beyond like what she was able to do here in America. I think maybe like American audiences didn't like really get her, but I think she's really wonderful in this.
Well, this American doesn't get her. And I didn't understand why she gets a happy ending or if I'm misreading it. Because we see her in the epilogue in the park with Donnie just smiling in the sunshine. And I couldn't decide, is it meant to illustrate that like she's all okay now and that she got her happy ending in the end? Or has she resumed like a daytime mask? Like, is it an act that this is Dorothy by day, right? That the sun is shining off of her skin. The lens is a little bit, you know, fuzzy and they're out at the park and everything's okay.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one way to interpret it. I mean, something interesting about the character in this whole scene that we're talking about here is this is something that happened to David Lynch when he was growing up. Like he saw a woman that had been beaten and bruised and was like naked. She had been attacked by someone and he talks about how traumatizing it was and how as a child, like he wanted to be able to help her, but he didn't know how to help her. And he describes her in this retelling about how like when she came out of the darkness, it looks like her arms were like suspended in the air by like unseen like ligatures. And so he shoots that like shot for shot what happens here. This is like a horrible nightmare memory from his childhood. And so maybe that's also what it is he had such a desperation to help what was this memory of this woman that like inspired the entirety of who Dorothy is. And maybe he wants to give her a happy ending to undo the nightmare like he grew up with.
I feel like middle management here because I'm like, hey, David, could you just do that on your own time? Could you? I'm trying to watch a movie.
This isn't the place for that, David. Let's take that offline. Let's take that offline.
When Dorothy calls Jeffrey my secret love, a distraught Sandy slaps him. Sandy tells her father everything, and Detective Williams then leads a police raid on Frank's headquarters. Jeffrey returns to Dorothy's apartment where he discovers her husband dead and the yellow man mortally wounded. The well-dressed man arrives, and Jeffrey realizes it's Frank. Jeffrey ambushes and kills Frank with the yellow man's gun moments before Sandy and Detective Williams arrive. Jeffrey and Sandy continue their relationship, and Dorothy is reunited with her son.
So, Ash, I agree. What's happened to her is horrible. It's a terrible thing. She's been a victim, but that makes it even worse. How about you help her out? I think that might be a nice thing. You don't need to be a detective. You don't need to be the wife of a detective to guess that Dorothy's been sexually and physically assaulted. How about let's close our mouth and let's offer some help? How about somebody, maybe you're in the house, go get a blanket. Or how about mom, let's ask her what happened. Instead, we get a grown-ass woman, naked, bleeding. She's beaten in the living room, spouting off about Jeffrey being the secret love, putting your disease in me. She says it twice. Laura Dern has got this ugly cry face, and it's probably the worst in chat history. But yet nobody offers her help until mom says, somebody get a blanket, get a towel. How about show some concern for this woman?
So Ash is not alone on this. I'm going to take a stab at it, right? They are so in their suburban shell that this bloodied, beaten, assaulted woman right in front of them, they don't know how to react to it. They can almost not acknowledge it. It's like Ricky's mom in American Beauty, right? It's like they see it, but they don't quite know what to do. Jeffrey, on the other hand, he's been around this shit. That motherfucker has 4 different blazers. He can't let Dorothy borrow one to cover her pendulous Italian tits. Like, I'm no knight in shining armor, but I would absolutely take off my clothes to help cover a naked assault victim. What the fuck is wrong with you, Jeffrey?
Yeah, or at least try to cover your tracks. When she's like, oh, my secret love. Oh, no, listen, she's speaking incoherently. She must be talking about Frank. Oh,
she's been traumatized.
You put your virus in me. Oh, no, that's not me. Shh, lay down on the couch. We're going to get you some
proverbial
help.
you. It's just the proverbial you. It has nothing to do with me.
She's get her some water, please. Everybody, leave the room. Get her some water. Don't listen to what she's saying.
Getting some real Casper vibes here.
But I need your help here, guys. Okay, the final scene we get, where Jeffrey comes in, and we've got the yellow man, and it seemed like another Rube Goldberg machine. He's standing there. There's a TV that's shattered, some electrical wires on the floor. He's got part of his brain exposed. There is her husband is shot on the couch next to them. What's going on? Was it a standoff that somebody got electrified? What's going on?
Yeah, Big D, if you're going to make shit weird, that's fine. But sometimes reality is like the strangest part of all. And we talked to Sarah while Big D was in town for Rocky Horror Picture Show. And in the car, she's like, nah, the damage to the yellow man's head would render him dead or at least unable to stay standing. It isn't anatomically correct. It could have been adjusted to look even weirder while being more accurate. But despite that complaint, I will say that it set us up for a terrific jump scare. When the radio comes to life and the yellow man just like abruptly jerks into motion, it's great. I had a gasp, a laugh, and a yell all at the same time. It was like, bah! It was great. It was great.
When I think like just to drive home, like the insane analysis of this film, like I don't think you're ever like fully supposed to like get the ending of any Lynch film. I think like that's like part of what he's doing here. And if you're listening at home, Gene is rolling his eyes right now.
I was Dern facing over here.
But that's so fucking mean. But like even this one, like David Lynch very famously referred to Blue Velvet as a dream of strange desires wrapped inside a mystery story.
No. Wow.
So, I think though, if you're gonna try and explain it, if that's what like you want to do, like I've already talked about, like there's this binary shown throughout, like every character is the opposite of the other. Jeffrey's good and then becomes cruel and abusive like Frank. Sandy is supposed to be the good girl and Dorothy's the bad one, so on and so forth. But at the end, like Sandy and Jeffrey, like they become like these metaphors for what society does with that gray area. They look at this robin eating the worm and they basically say like, oh man, isn't the world strange? Like, and they chalk violence and they chalk like the bad shit up to just something that nature does, not what human nature does. And they believe this lie that the world is good and that people are good, even though they've just lived through this dark like underbelly of it. And they forget the past that shows the truth and they pick like this ignorance of the future. And that's Lynch, the absolute blissful ignorance that is suburbia. That's what he plagues on. That's what he loves to expose, because we're all just too blissful out in the suburbs in our own ignorance to like do anything to change how fucking awful we all are.
Now's the time in the podcast where we give our Shat score. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get our respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is living a posh life as a drug fence who sings Roy Orbison into a golden smoking jacket surrounded by chill aunties who serve him cold beer. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster. It's being Dorothy Vallens. Ash, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for Blue Velvet?
So I'm the lone man on the pod here that this is like a great Lynch film. I love David Lynch, and this is one of my favorites. I do think that The Lost Highway is his most underrated. I love that movie, and I think that Eraserhead is his best, but I love this one. I think it's very good. I think you get one of the best bad guys ever with Dennis Hopper here. You get a young Laura Dern who is beautiful. Justice for Laura Dern. I love her. I think that you can't go wrong. It's stylized, it's fun, it's dark, it's moody, it's all those things. And this is not maybe appropriate for Shat the movies, because this is a podcast about movies that are meant to be watched as movies. And I don't know if I would agree that David Lynch films are meant to be watched like as we watch other movies. Like it's meant to be something else. And you can roll your eyes at that and you can like laugh at that, but like that's what it is. I mean, art house cinema is a different type of cinema than like mainstream cinema. Like I know Scorsese got like totally lambasted for when he said, you know, there's a difference between film and movies, like cinema and movies. I agree with him. And I would go even further that there's a difference between art house directors like Lars von Trier's, like David Lynch, and things that are meant to like be seen at like Cinemark, right? You can go to the Cinemark or your Regal Cinema to go see most movies that I fucking love. Or you can go to your art house theater, like the River Oaks Theater here in Houston or the Britannia Theater in New Orleans, and you go see movies like this. So I have to judge it for what it is. And I think it's a great art house film. So I'm giving it 1.5 wipes.
Visually, I agree with you, Ash. This movie is terrific. I loved Ben's scene at This Is It. The lady dancing on the car was fantastic. Dennis Hopper with lipstick on his face. All memorable scenes that I will cherish. Raymond and Paul and the diner and the slow club, again, just stuck in my memory. But a movie needs to be more than things to look at. And namely, it needs acting. And Dennis Hopper, he's holding his own, to be sure. He's great. But everyone else dropped the ball on an already awful script. This movie was hard to watch. It was unfulfilling to understand. And it was just slightly better than Dune. I appreciate the oddity of it, but it is not enough to make it a winner. It's 3.5 wipes for me.
So first, I want to start with, I had originally was going to give this a 4.75. But Ash, you talked me down 1 full wipe. Yes, it's an art house film, but that should not get him a universal pass that you said you're not supposed to get the ending. He's been given a free pass. And the way that I felt this movie was, it's like when you have a well-known artist who sets up some kind of an art installation and everyone stands around and goes, oh my goodness, look, it's so insightful and I can see what he was going for. Because people are afraid a lot of times to say that they don't get it or don't like it. It feels like he's odd just for the sake of being odd. I like some art house films. I just felt the script was bad. I didn't care about the characters. And in the odd moments were its best, but unfortunately, they were few and far between. So I'm going to go 3.75 wipes.
All right, 3.75 wipes from Big D, 3.5 wipes from me, and 1.5 wipes from Ash gives us an average wipe score of 2.916 repeating wipes for Blue Velvet.
Gene, with that score of a 2.91666 repeating wipes, that now ties this in the 205 spot with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Flatliners, Needful Things, and So I Married an Axe Murderer. It is slightly better than Christmas Vacation, Commando, and Revenge of the Nerds, and slightly worse than Transformer the Movie, Jumanji, and Maximum Overdrive, mentioned before.
This is the De Laurentiis block.
The Jumanji is... I mean, it's just there's certain... Our system works, except for certain genres of movies. Like, it just doesn't.
Now you're going to make me, like, for my freebie that I keep talking about, trying to find another art house film. I'm not the typical, like you mentioned, going to the 50-screen multiplex.
Oh, I know you're not.
I enjoy an art house film. It was just, there was something about his work that just, it did not speak to me. And again, not every movie is meant for everybody. So
it isn't. Yeah. And that is totally okay. It is totally okay to not like David Lynch. Like, it's totally fine. I just think he's a genius. And Dune, I think, is a fucking zero white movie. I fucking love that movie.
The original?
No, the remake.
Oh.
I liked it too.
Well, thank you, Ken, for commissioning Blue Velvet. We have a couple voicemails I'd like to get to tonight. Let's start out with Alexander Wolfgang calling in about Smokey and the Bandit.
Eastbound and down, loaded up and trucking. We gonna do what they say can't be done. Hey, Shat Crew. This is your pal, Alexander Wolfgang from the Secondary Heroes podcast. I just wanted to leave a voicemail because I am so excited. I'm listening to the Smokey and the Bandit episode right now. I'm 4 minutes in. You guys haven't shat on it yet. So I'm very excited to get to this episode. This is one of those movies that, as a youngster, it invigorated my car enthusiasm. I own a 1981 DeLorean. Back to the Future is great. But Smokey and the Bandit, that's my next car. If I can get another movie car, it's going to be the Smokey and the Bandit Firebird. I absolutely love that car. And anytime I go on a road trip, Eastbound and Down by Jerry Reed is always on my radio. This is such a fantastic movie. I really hope you guys don't shat on it too much. Sorry, I'm running out of breath. I am on a walk with my dog. But I'm looking forward to listening to this episode. I just had to send a voicemail before I got into it, before you guys started, chatting on it.
Well, that's a humble brag I've never heard. If I'm going to get another movie car, I'm going to get myself an Ecto-1.
Listen, I think about Alexander often because I gave him shit about the cosplay thing. And you know what? You get the car that makes you happy, buddy. I got my Miata. I don't think there was ever a movie about Miatas. It might have been in Cars, I think, or something. But I think it's important, unlike Ash, to have an emotional attachment to your vehicle and some whimsy, perhaps.
Yeah.
I'd like a DeLorean.
I cleaned out our Pilot today and found so many things. It's going to be trashed again next week. It's fine. Cars mean nothing.
Anything you've been looking for?
No, not really.
An ear,
but
perhaps?
No.
Yeah.
Do. Oh, an ear.
It was under my seat. How could it have gotten there?
I don't want to touch this bloody knife. Then I'll be a suspect.
All right. Thanks, Alexander, for calling in. Next up, we have one from Ian in Dublin.
Hi guys, absolutely love your podcast. I listen to it on the regular. My name is Ian. I live in Dublin, Ireland. I work for a company that makes a very well-known drink. It has a black body and a white head. I'll leave that to you. Just wanted to chat to you about a movie that I don't know if you've ever covered any Irish movies, but in the mid-90s, late 80s, early 90s, amazing movie by Alan Parker, who directed Mississippi Burning, Midnight Express, Fame. He made a very kind of low budget movie here in Dublin called The Commitments. It's an amazing movie. It features like lots of unknown stars at the time, like Glenn Hansard, who went on to write Once, Colm Meaney, who went on to do like a Star Trek, and actually has the first appearance from Shannon Corr from the Corrs. In my opinion, it nails Dublin in that time period. It has our humour, our dark humour, and loads of music, very, very funny. And I believe when it came out in the States the first time, it actually came with a little kind of a dictionary because of our terms and the words that we use in it. But I think if you haven't seen it, it's a fantastic movie to watch. I'd love to see if someone would like to commission it, or if you'd like to talk about it at all. So The Commitments. And maybe look at there's some great, really weird movies from the 80s and 90s that are produced in Ireland and the UK that you might have missed. Thank you.
I remember the soundtrack. The soundtrack was great. It was one of those movies that got you into kind of a different genre. I remember Mustang Sally was a hit. I'd be interested into watching it.
Yeah, oddly enough, with my Anglophilia and my love of Ireland and Scotland, for that matter, never watched The Commitments, and I feel like it's just like a gap in my film knowledge.
Yeah, I've never seen it. Let's do it.
Yeah, well, Ian, hopefully we can get a crowdfunded commission together, so I'll put that on the list for things that we're trying to get crowdfunded, and we'll see what we can do for you. But thank you so much for calling in, and thank you to everyone who called in and left us a voicemail. If you'd like to leave a voicemail, go to shatpod.com, use the SpeakPipe feature. You can use it on any device. It could be your phone, your computer, whatever, and you get a couple minutes to record whatever you like. We'd love to hear your voices and your takes on our podcast. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
Gene, next week, wealthy New York City playboy Arthur Bach is perpetually drunk and completely rudderless. Dutifully supported by his sharp tongue and quick-witted butler, Hobson, Arthur reluctantly prepares to enter into an arranged marriage with heiress Susan Johnson. When he meets Linda Marola, a waitress from Queens, he falls head over heels in love, but if he backs out of his engagement with Susan, he may lose his fortune. Commissioned by David Kay, came out in 1981, and I can remember seeing this one in the theaters. Probably shouldn't have been there as a kid, but I'm interested to go back and see how it holds up today.
It's terrible that I've only seen the Russell Brand remake.
We will not speak of that on this podcast, Ash.
I'm just saying, that's the only one I've seen. I know.
It is filth. It is vile.
It wasn't good.
I remember the song.
When you get caught between the moon and New York City.
Is that in the remake?
You can't do. They probably did like a hip hop version of it or something.
Is fall in love.
No, it was like a Russell Brand version.
Ugh.
Sounds awful.
Well, thank you, David, for commissioning the upcoming movie. And thank you so much, Ken, for commissioning Blue Velvet, our favorite art house film that we've done on this podcast. Thank you to all the commissioners to make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. Email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all that information on our website, shatpod.com. podcast.com/TV. Wherever we find podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next week for the following movie.
Don't you wish you were Arthur?
Would the more attractive of you please step forward?
Gonna cost you $100.
Let's make it $200, but I will ask you to simonize my car.
How rich are you?
I wish I had a dime for every dime I have.
Anticipating your condition, I brought you orange juice, coffee, and aspirins. Or do you need to throw up?
Kiss your wife like that?
I'm not married.
Keep smiling. 688-5549.
Usually one must go to a bowling alley to meet a woman of your stature.
I take it this bum will be calling you.
Dad, he's a millionaire.
You have my permission to marry him. Are you a hooker? I forgot. I just thought I was doing great with you.
Will you take my hand?
That would leave you with one. Offer to take my coat.
You don't have a coat.
Well, offer to take my tie.
You're a rich one. How does it feel to have all that money?
Feels great.
A dumb question.
What's so funny now?
I sometimes just think funny things.
What do you do for a living?
I race cars, I play tennis, I fondle women, but I have weekends off and I am my own boss.
Dudley Moore is Arthur.
Don't you wish you were me? I know I do.
Don't you wish you were Arthur? Arthur, the most fun money can buy. An Orion Pictures release through Warner Brothers.
The film concerns a young college student who, returning home to visit his ill father, discovers a severed human ear in a field. The ear then leads him to uncover a vast criminal conspiracy and into a romantic relationship with a troubled lounge singer. The screenplay of Dude, I don't know what is going on.
Stroke out? What happened?
This is like amazing for me.
This is if Big D was the host.
I think I'm still like fight high, and so I can't fucking like. All right, let me try that whole thing.